Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today we're diving into something that might seem a little bit odd at first,
Yeah.
waiting to lose.
Mm.
But before you think that we are like advocating just giving up and, just rolling over,
Right.
let me assure you that it's really the opposite. It's
Yeah.
more about like, sometimes being strategic and you step back from a situation or you kind of accept maybe a small loss, and that can really set you up for much bigger wins later on.
Yeah. You know what I find so interesting about this whole idea of waiting to lose is it's really counterintuitive.
Yeah,
It's like we're kind of wired to fight for every single win no matter what.
right.
But this idea is saying, no, sometimes you need to be a little more strategic, pick your battles and realize that sometimes, holding back can be the most powerful tool.
Yeah. And it's almost like going from just reacting to everything to actually having a plan.
Exactly.
And the source that we were looking at today for this deep dive, it actually uses a chess analogy.
Oh, interesting.
Have you ever played chess?
I have, yeah. I'm not very good at it,
Me neither.
but I like the analogy.
Yeah, me too. And I think it really works here because in chess, sometimes you got to sacrifice a pawn or even a more important piece
Right.
so that later in the game you're in a better position.
Exactly. And it's not about losing that one piece. It's about the bigger
The
picture.
strategy.
Yeah, the strategy.
Exactly. And so when we apply that to real life, I mean, sometimes we might need to accept a loss in the short term, like,
Right.
maybe letting go of a point in a negotiation or even just like a small setback in a project that you're working on so that ultimately you can get to that bigger goal.
I think that's a great point. And you know what's a perfect example of this is Netflix versus Blockbuster.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of people know that story, but if you look at it through the lens of waiting to lose, it's really interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you mentioned that because when I was reading about this, I was really fascinated about this.
Yeah.
So let's kind of take people back.
Okay.
Back in the day, Netflix was mainly a DVD rental company, right?
Right.
And they were competing directly with Blockbuster.
Yeah, Blockbuster was everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't escape them.
Right, like massive stores, brand recognition. They were huge.
Yeah, they were huge.
But, Netflix, even back then, they were already thinking bigger.
Hmm.
They saw that the future wasn't these physical DVDs. It was going to be streaming.
Yeah, and it's amazing they recognized that so early.
Yeah. So, I mean, what did they do? Did they try to just compete with Blockbuster at their own game?
Well, that's where the waiting to lose comes in.
Okay.
They realized that to win the streaming game, they kind of had to lose the DVD rental battle. So they shifted all their focus and resources to building up that streaming platform, even though it meant that they were going to lose some ground in the DVD market.
Which was really Blockbuster's whole thing.
Exactly.
Wow. And Blockbuster being so focused on what they were already doing, they didn't really see what was coming, did they?
It's like they were so determined to win that immediate battle that they totally missed the bigger war that was coming.
Right. And we all know how that ended up.
We do.
It's a pretty clear example of how sometimes accepting a temporary loss can actually lead to a much bigger victory later on.
Yeah, and I think what's so important to remember is that it wasn't just luck for Netflix. It was a deliberate decision based on, a really deep understanding of how the market was changing.
Exactly. And that's what really sets this concept apart from just giving up.
Yeah,
It's about making a smart decision, being proactive, not just reactive.
exactly. It's about adapting and evolving, even if it means letting go of what seems like a sure win in the moment.
Right, for something much bigger in the future.
Exactly.
And this is a good point to maybe talk about how this applies to something that's a little closer to home, like our personal relationships.
Yeah, I think we can all relate to situations in our personal lives where we just want to win,
Uh-huh.
even if it means, maybe hurting the relationship in the process.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, we've all been in those arguments where, you're so sure you're right,
Right.
but, if you keep pushing it, you're just going to make things worse.
Exactly. And it's like that saying, would you rather be right or would you rather be happy?
Yeah, exactly.
And, in those moments, I think that's where waiting to lose can be so powerful in relationships. It's not about being a pushover or letting people walk all over you.
Right.
It's more about recognizing when it's better to just let something go for the sake of the relationship.
Right. So it's like picking your battles, right?
Exactly.
Not sweating the small stuff and just like focusing on what really matters.
Yeah, and the source we're looking at actually gives 3 key steps for applying this waiting to lose idea in our lives.
Okay. I like it. Lay it on me.
Okay, so the first one is all about mastering the art of picking your battles.
Okay.
And this goes beyond just like letting small things slide.
Okay.
It's about taking a step back and asking yourself, is this issue really worth like disrupting the peace?
Yeah.
Will it matter a week from now, a month from now, a year from now? If not, maybe it's a good time to just wait to lose.
I mean, I know I'm definitely guilty of getting caught up in the moment sometimes,
Yeah,
but thinking about the long-term impact on the relationship is a really helpful way to kind of reframe those situations.
for sure. And the second step builds on that long-term perspective. It's
Yeah.
all about focusing on the long game.
Okay.
And that means like really identifying what are your ultimate goals for this relationship?
Yeah.
What do you truly value? Connection, mutual respect, shared experiences.
Hmm.
When you keep those things in mind, it can really help you figure out, which battles are worth fighting and which ones are better off just letting go.
So it's like having this like North Star for your relationship.
Exactly.
Even if there are bumps along the way,
Mm-hmm.
even if you maybe lose a few little arguments here and there,
Yeah.
as long as you're moving in that direction of those bigger goals, you're on the right track.
That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
It leads perfectly into the third step, which is all about patience.
Okay.
Sometimes the best thing you can do in a relationship is just wait. Just give things time to unfold.
Yeah.
Give the other person space to process. Maybe let time smooth over some rough edges.
Yeah.
Because if you just rush in, ready to fight, it can just make things worse.
So it's like timing is everything in relationships.
Exactly.
I mean, I'm starting to see how these three steps really work together.
Yeah.
Picking your battles, focusing on the long game, being patient. It's like a totally different way to approach relationships, and it can make them so much better.
And it can help us move away from that, win-lose kind of thinking.
Right.
And more towards like collaboration and harmony.
It's interesting because it challenges this idea that we're always supposed to win, to be successful.
Right.
But what if true success in relationships actually comes from knowing when to lose?
That's such a great point.
Like when to step back and not worry about being right and just focus on the connection.
And it's about moving away from that ego,
Yeah.
not needing to be right all the time and instead just being more humble and strategic.
It's like being that chess player who's thinking many moves ahead,
Exactly.
not the one who just reacts to whatever happens.
And that takes discipline.
Yeah.
And being willing to play the long game.
But that mindset shift can be really powerful.
It cares.
I mean, it lets you detach from like needing a certain outcome right now and make decisions that are based on your values and your long-term goals.
Yeah, it's about recognizing that sometimes taking a step back is the best way to move forward.
And that sometimes accepting a loss kind of strategically can actually be a sign of strength,
Absolutely.
not weakness.
It's about choosing your battles wisely, knowing when to hold back, and realizing that a temporary setback, might actually be setting you up for something much bigger and better down the road.
Wow, this has been such a fascinating deep dive. I feel like we've really unpacked this idea of waiting to lose in a way that goes beyond just the surface level.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, like, how do we actually cultivate this mindset shift in our daily lives?
Right.
It's one thing to like intellectually grasp the concept, but actually putting it into practice in those high pressure moments when you're in the thick of it,
Yeah.
that's a whole other challenge.
You're absolutely right. It's not always easy. Our brains are kind of wired to avoid loss, to seek immediate gratification.
Right.
So to really shift to this mindset of embracing strategic loss, it takes effort and practice.
So where do we even begin? Do you have any practical tips or exercises that could help us like integrate this into our decision making?
Absolutely. One powerful technique I found really helpful is to kind of reframe how we think about losing.
Okay.
Instead of seeing it as a setback or a failure, try to see it as an opportunity for growth and learning.
Oh, I like that. It's like finding the silver lining.
Exactly.
Even in those situations where we might feel like we've, come up short.
Right. Every experience, even the ones we perceive as negative, they hold valuable lessons.
Right.
It's about asking yourself, what can I learn from this situation? How can I use this to grow and become more resilient?
It's like that saying, every master was once a disaster.
Yeah.
It's those so-called losses that often teach us the most.
Exactly. And when you can start to reframe losing in this way, it can actually take away some of that fear. We become less afraid to take risks, to step outside our comfort zones.
Right.
Because even if things don't go exactly as planned, we know we can still learn something valuable from the experience.
So it's almost like shifting our perspective from fearing loss to embracing it as like a necessary part of growth.
Yeah.
and ultimately success.
Absolutely.
And that could be really liberating.
It can, because when we're not so afraid to lose, we open ourselves up to new possibilities, to making bolder decisions
Mhm.
and to being more flexible and adaptable when things get tough.
It's like we're playing chess with a whole new level of confidence.
Exactly.
We're not just reacting